Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and I've been very curious about the 24 Honda CBR650R ever since Honda announced its new e-clutch technology. For those of you who are not in the know, Honda released an automatic shifting manual transmission for the CBR650R and the CB650. This allows you to ride this bike like a full normal conventional motorcycle sequential shift manual transmission, or ride it like not a full automatic, but without using the clutch. That's what you really need to know. The bike will take off from a stop and allow you to shift in both directions at any speeds without use of the clutch. So it's different from something like Honda's dual clutch automatic motorcycles that allow you to fully ride without even thinking about shifting. This bike, you do still have to shift it, but whether you're a beginner rider or you're a veteran rider riding in heavy traffic situations or track type situations where you're doing a lot of shifting, it doesn't really matter. The e-clutch promises to provide an enhancement for your motorcycle riding. And that is what I have found to be the case after spending a few months with the bike. I am 100% sold on the e-clutch. In fact, I find it to be the most compelling feature of the CBR650R. Some of you might say, Charlie, how could that be? This is one of the few, if not the only, if I'm not mistaken, 650 class motorcycles that gets you an inline 4 engine. And while that is true, this one does rev higher, make more horsepower, and have 2 more cylinders than most of the other bikes in its class. However, I don't think that's necessarily a huge selling point after spending time with the bike. It's cool, it sounds unique, it's smooth, and it does have a much higher red line than a lot of those other motorcycles. But in day-to-day riding, I actually could kind of prefer the gruntiness of a 2-cylinder or maybe kind of the hybrid of a 3-cylinder. So today we're going to go for a ride. We're going to talk about what makes the CBR650R cool. We're going to talk about maybe some of its weak points, and we're going to talk about if you should buy one. So obviously the e-clutch is the big new news for 24 for the CBR650R, but we also get some new styling and some new engine tweaks, as well as a little bit new technology up in front of us, as we'll see when we're riding as well. I do have to say the bike looks striking. I love getting this nice Honda red, and I also appreciate the Honda up on the tank and down here at the bottom in the fairing. I mean, it really does make it look like a straight up track bike, even though this is technically just a 650 class motorcycle. The only thing I did notice is a bit strange with the styling. When you're looking at it head on, especially like if you're riding in front of it in the rearview mirrors, this kind of gives me a little bit of an Insane Clown Posse clown sort of makeup a feel to it. So that's a bit strange. But other than that, I think it's a very handsome and aggressively styled motorcycle. Getting up onto it. The ergonomics are interesting in that it's much more sport-oriented than something like a Ninja 650, which, side note, I should mention we do have a full comparison that I shot between this bike, a Ninja 650, and a ZX6R. You can find that linked below. That kind of gives some of the pros and cons to this and the other bikes in comparison. I also want to mention that today I'm wearing my Helite leather jacket because this is a cool motorcycle, and I want to look cool while also being protected. So it's a full leather vest that also has some normal padding and airbag technology built in. So if I were to get flung off the motorcycle, presumably in an accident, it would help reduce my risk of serious injury or death. I just click in right here, and boom, we're safe, or at least safer. But anyway, we're a little bit more leaned over than you are on a lot of the other 650 class motorcycles. Ooh, and you can hear I got it a little bit toasty on the way here. Let's get it started up. And I'm going to have to devote a whole section of the beginning of this video talking about e-clutch. But before I do, you can see we've got a 5-inch TFT display in front of us. You can switch it between light and dark modes. I prefer this dark mode. You've got a tachometer up there on the top, all digital, gear indicator, fuel. If you bring it up to the side, you can see information like live MPG readouts, average MPG readouts, average speed, tripometer, odometer, clock. We do have ABS, we do have traction control, but now the e-clutch. What I've found cool about the e-clutch is that because it's still a normal manual transmission, you can still ride it as such. You can entirely disable the e-clutch system if you wanted. Let's see if I can remember how to do it. It's been a little while. And down here, settings, E-clutch. You can change how aggressively you need to press the shifter in order to get to shift. And then right here, you can turn it off. And now E-clutch is off. Now, this is a normal shift lever, and I have to put it into gear, let the clutch out, and you can 100% ride the CBR650R around like a normal manual transmission bike. If you are a big fan of the motorcycle and you think something like an E-clutch is blasphemy, put it in manual mode at the dealer. Never think about it. However, if you have it enabled, it's this cool hybrid mode. So let's get back into neutral, bring up settings again. Now it's on. And I get a little green light next to me here. And right here, the shift lever is loose now. Now I can still pull it in and engage a normal clutch, and then I can let it out, and now it's still a normal manual bike. So it's still acting like a normal manual. But if I were to go back into neutral, now I see the green light again there, and then without touching the clutch, put it into first, then all of a sudden it's pulling the clutch in for me. It's engaged the clutch, or technically disengaged it, and now I can simply turn the accelerator and it lets out the clutch for me. And then when I go to shift, it's going to disengage the clutch and re-engage it all on its own. How cool is that? No shift lever. It's doing the shifting, or part of the shifting I should say, for me. And it's not a big learning curve. I had both myself and then my two buddies, while we were shooting the comparison video, try it out, and yeah, we got used to it pretty quick. Come up to a stop here in first gear, don't have to pull in the clutch, just come to a stop, it does the clutching for you, you continue on the way. Remarkably smooth and well executed. And then when you're riding, it feels similar to how a quick shifter might, in that you just kind of do your shifting, and the bike's sort of blipping the throttle for you, but then also engaging a clutch, or disengaging. I'm going to use those two words interchangeably. I recognize that one of them is incorrect. So it allows you to blast off these super speedy shifts, and then it also allows you to just concentrate a little bit more on the road and the traffic situation. We're going to start off today with a little bit of a highway section. You're not going to be able to hear me super well, so I'm just going to kind of get up to speed here and let you all hear the bike, and we'll talk about it a bit more at lower speeds. Because the ergos are more aggressive on the CBR650R than a lot of the other 650 bikes, if you do a lot of highway riding, it makes it a little bit more comfortable for getting down into sort of a tuck situation and having the wind come over you. And also it helps you position your body such that you're leaning into the wind more, as opposed to being upright like a sail. However, coming around that corner reminds me that this motor needs to be revved out and revved up in order to get into the power band. It's not like a lot of 650 class motorcycles where you can be cruising around here on 4,000 RPM and twist the throttle and get up to speed and get gruntiness and strictly acceleration. I mean, you really, if I'm full throttle right here, the bike's barely getting going. I gotta get down and get well up closer to the power band. I mean, this bike makes peak power at 12,000 RPM. That's almost double what you're seeing out of some other 650 class bikes, out of the twin cylinders. And don't get me wrong, that's exciting if that's the type of riding experience you're looking for, that kind of conventional sport bike, rev it out and feel the power build and surge as you get to the top of the rev range. But a lot of people, when they're just daily riding, aren't looking to ride like that. They're getting up to speed, shift, all right, you're cruising along, and then, oh, you get a little break in traffic, or you're coming around a corner, and you want to be able to blip the throttle and kind of pull away without having to shift. And it brings me to the most illuminating rub, if you will, on the CBR650R that has become more and more clear to me over the time that I've had the bike. It tries to be this best of both worlds motorcycle that's both sport bike E and then standard bike E, if you will. So obviously we got the 4 cylinders, which pretty much no other 650 is using anymore. We've got more horsepower on paper and more torque than some of them. It's actually, torque figure is actually the same as the Ninja 650, and it just makes it a lot higher. We've got a little bit more aggressive ergonomics, but what it promises is the best of both worlds, but what it actually gets you is a little bit of the worst of both worlds, because you have to rev it out to get the power, but you're not getting this sort of break your arms back sort of crescendo power that you would get on a 600 class motorcycle when you're getting well up over 100 horsepower. Those type of bikes get truly otherworldly when you get up into the high rev range. This bike simply gets quicker. And part of that is due to the fact that this is actually a little bit portly. It's 460 pounds compared to a lot of other bikes in this class, which are right down closer to the 400-pound mark. So you add an extra 30 or 40 pounds onto this thing, and all of a sudden it's a little less happy to turn over in the corners, and it's a little less willing to get up to speed because you just got to motivate a little bit more bike. Now that's not to say it isn't very fast. As you can see there, it's plenty fast. But motorcycles are mostly kind of fast. I mean, unless you're on a little dual sport or something, most bikes these days are gonna feel pretty quick compared to your average car. So again, this is kind of in this awkward in-between where it's not gonna be impressive for somebody who's used to 4-cylinder, 600 class or above motorcycles, but it's going to be harder to access for someone who's a little bit more used to torquier bikes. And then, in order to be up here by the power band, I'm getting this really, it's not a pleasant engine to be revved out all the way up like this. I'm feeling a lot of vibration. I'm hearing a lot of valve train and injector noise. Maybe with a better exhaust, it would be a little bit more satisfying to have up near the red line, but in order to be in the power band, I'm kind of dealing with this noise that I don't really care much for. Now, yes, the bike still is a very capable cornering machine. We've got Showa suspension with some adjustment in there. We've got great brakes and a great chassis. But again, I suspect if someone is buying a Honda sport motorcycle to take to the track, they're gonna jump up to the 600. And this is still more to wrestle around on back roads than something that were a little bit lighter, a little bit torquier, maybe a little bit of a different seating position. Again, the E-clutch is so great for situations where you're pulling out into traffic or just anywhere where you might be at risk of stalling because you're simply just not going to stall with the E-clutch. But before we wrap up, I'm gonna maybe blow your mind a little bit here with this concept that being better wouldn't necessarily make this bike better. And the fact that it does have some of this quirkiness and some of these flaws might actually make it a little bit more of a desirable bike to purchase. Now let me explain. There is a lot about the Ninja 650 that makes it a better motorcycle for most daily riding situations than the CBR650R. However, the CBR650R feels more like a cool motorcycle. There's something about the fact that, yes, I'm not as comfortable on this as I am on the Ninja. And it is a bit, I don't want to go as far as to say unwieldy, but it takes a little bit of effort and skill to kind of motor it around. And It does require me to work a little bit for that torque and for that power up high. There is an aspect of all that that actually makes me like the bike and makes me want to go ride it. So much so that if I'm going to be on the motorcycle for less than an hour, and when I had the Ninja 650 and the CBR 650R in the garage together, I would grab the keys to the CBR 650R. Now, part of that is because of the E-clutch, but another part is just because getting to do things like this, it's just a little bit more unique. It's a little bit more special scenery. So I actually think the CBR 650R makes sense for someone who wants to feel a little bit of the inconvenience of riding a sport bike without actually taking on the full inconveniences of riding a proper super sport, something like a 600RR or obviously a 1000 or something like that. Those bikes are going to be unforgiving on the street. They're going to cost a boatload to insure. They're going to cost a lot to buy, and you're going to hate being on them after an hour and a half. This bike lessens all of that without actually making it go away. So it is still a little bit uncomfortable after an hour and a half. It is still a little bit down on power, down low. And it still is going to cost you a little bit more on insurance than maybe one of those other more basic twin-cylinder bikes. Ooh. Silly Hondas with their turn signals in the opposite position of every other bike. But for someone who's maybe an older rider, maybe doesn't ride all that much anymore, but maybe had some sport bikes back in the day, and the time is right, they want to go out and purchase a new motorcycle. They want to have it in the garage. They want to look cool, feel cool. But at the same time, they don't need something that's going to rip their arms off at 150 miles per hour. And they might like kind of being able to ride a little bit easier with the E-clutch. And maybe their hands get a little bit sore. Maybe they've got a little bit of arthritis or something like that. And the E-clutch is just going to allow them to ride easier and for longer and more often in less pain. This CBR is going to give you a lot of the perks of a super sport without actually making you ride a super sport. And there's merit to that. There really is. So I'm not going to tell you that it's the best of both worlds, but I will tell you it will give you both worlds. And for some people, that's enough. All that being said, I cannot wait for Honda E-clutch to be in more products. If I could get something like a Transalp with the E-clutch in there, I mean, game over. That's fantastic. I'm so looking forward to that. In the CBR 650R, I get it, but I just can't wait to see it in more bikes. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the CBR 650R, check the link below. I've got a little fuel economy test and that comparison. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, ride on.